Hello, my name is Danna Sanchez, and I am reading a story of a close friend of mine. The story's title is Lady's Choice. Rain had always been significant. It was a memento of an earlier time. It had been refreshing. It had been light. It used to mean something. It used to be the chain that connected the two souls. Now, all it was a painful reminder of what had not been. It was the wooden splinter stuck in a finger, every time equally as painful. Every slight brush and tap sent the sensitive nerves in a sharp stab. One would know it was there, the splinter, and would avoid having anything touch it until it went away. But rain never went away. It would always come down, every now and then, a constant reminder. Tonight, the rain was welcomed. It would help cover the emotions, as well as what they were doing. The rain was thick and hard. It felt like marbles crashing down wooden stairs. The wind was even less welcoming. It was a strong torrent. It sent leaves up in small twisters and scared even-tempered horses safe in their barns. The lady, because she was more than just a woman, waited patiently next to a pine tree. Her coat was expensive. It was a trench coat, obviously. The buttons were gold. Her hair was perfectly protected under an equally expensive hat. Her boots had slight stains of mud, but it was nothing the maid back home wouldn't quickly remedy. The beautiful face, adorned with strong cheekbones and plump red lips, was pulled tight together by tension. The extreme weather would correctly hide the true nature of such a face to the naked eye. But a naked eye was not going to be meeting her that night. A rather precise and all-knowing eye would be making her acquaintance once again. That was the problem with getting to know people well. When you have had a falling out, they know every single one of your thoughts without you having to do more than look in a certain direction. The lady hoped dearly that they would take as long as they wanted to meet her. She was not eager to see the pair. Fate was an impetuous and cruel thing. If only they had never met. She had meant well when she volunteered, never realizing that her noble will would cost her. Now, at the time, she did not know that her contact would be him, that she would be exchanging cryptic letters again with him. The first time it had been for fun, a way to arrange seeing each other without anyone finding out. This time, it was to transport art out of southern France and across the Channel to England, before the Nazis could find it. Well, one would suppose fate also needed some sort of entertainment. Everyone knew he had married. The lady had never bothered to find out much. She didn't want anyone thinking she still cared. That would have been rather mortifying. But tonight, she would get to meet them both. She would get them past the checkpoints the Germans had up and down occupied France. Only for this one night, of course. Anything more than that would be too dangerous. Underneath her obscenely expensive designer coat was a revolver. It was meant in case something happened at the checkpoints. If she were to say, use it on them both, after they got the artwork out, who would know it had been her and not some young Aryans? Of course, she would never do such a thing. It was raining. They had promised never to fight when it was raining. They arrived far too soon for any more contemplation to be done. She was a lady due to her graceful manners and principled disposition, not just because of her high fashion. It was more than expected that she treat them with the decorum that so easily flowed through her veins, something he had been good at, but never with the same glowing authenticity. "Lovely night for a rendezvous, don't you think?" she said with a glowing smile. The man quickly recognized the slight faltering in the tone. He had seen her in action, the way a swift and warm smile could get them into any sold-out show. When they had trapezed around together, she seemed to know just about everyone there was to know. The man's wife did not hear the faltering. All she noticed and saw was an incredibly beautiful woman, dressed impeccably. This person before her had been more than her husband's old flame. She was more akin to the lost love of his life. Not that her husband had ever said that. The look in his eyes gave it away, but it was really all those unsent love letters addressed to this woman. She had found them hidden away in their attic. But it did not matter. He had married her, not this woman. The lady wasn't sure if to be relieved or to be insulted. The wife, well, she was rather ugly. The woman kept herself clean, but there were some things a cold cream could not fix. The lady felt a spike of anger. This was who he had chosen to replace her with? This woman? She intended to find out what he had seen in her this very night. "We best get moving," the lady said, leading them past the pine tree they had been waiting near and towards the car. It was the latest model. "Looks like you did become rich, after all, kid." The husband should have known better than to use the old nickname, but it had been his favorite habit for a very long time. The lady gave a smile and opened the driver's door. "Well, fortune decided to dote upon me, and then decided to make her pay for its generosity with this very moment." The husband was itching to ask her if she was married, if she had found someone else, when and how. Exactly how soon after he left had she forgotten him? The wife wanted to cry. With that slight interaction, she saw the interconnectedness that webbed between them. It wasn't the words or the exchange. It was the way the air crackled around them, the knowledge they held of each other. Instead of crying, she sat in the back of the car with her husband. The husband wanted a way to organically find out everything, a way to not show how his heart had leapt once he had laid eyes on her. It reminded him of the first time he had kissed her. They had been on a beach. She had been wearing a red swimsuit with white polka dots. The sun was setting over the waves. It was the perfect moment he had been waiting for. She had these tortoiseshell sunglasses on. Her hair was drying from being wet all day, and she was lying on her back on the bare sand. "You got a minute, kid? There's something I've been meaning to get around to." She had opened her eyes and pulled her sunglasses down, and that's when he had kissed her. It still felt like it was yesterday. The lady kept her eyes glued to the road. The storm made it difficult to concentrate on anything else. Perhaps fate wasn't always so cruel. "It's been quite some time, kid. Get into any good trouble lately?" The lady fought the urge to roll her eyes at him, like she had done many a time before. "Well, of course. Right now would be a perfect example. Other than that, there isn't much to do on the estate." The husband could not wait any longer. "Estate? Marry rich, now did you?" The wife felt completely insignificant, and rightly so. She had been forgotten. "Of course not. I worked for a rich old duchess who had no family. She made me her heiress. She passed, and now it's just me and the servants." That had made him feel better. She wasn't married. It was a rather selfish and deplorable thing, but the thought of her mind occupied on someone besides him was too disturbing. He loved his wife, somewhat. She cooked very well. That was the main reason he had married her. That, and the fact that he couldn't handle the crippling loneliness he felt, and had no idea on how to apologize to the woman in the front seat. He truly was horrible. "Well, aren't you a lucky one? The painting is in this car, your letter said?" "Indeed, hidden beneath the floor of the trunk." He nodded. He figured he should stop talking. He had gotten what he wanted, and his wife looked miserable. The poor thing. The wife wanted to rise above the situation. She knew her looks did not compare to the woman driving the car, but she did have some qualities. "That is such a lovely coat and hat you've got on," the wife said. Her voice showed the genuine attempt at small talk, but betrayed the insecurity she felt in her chest. "Why, thank you. I got it in Milan. A dear friend of mine. His sister owns an atelier of haute couture, and he gifted it to me last month." "Oh, how nice it must be to have friends across the continent," the wife said. "I wish mine were that generous. Now, may I ask, if it's prudent, you were able to go and come back through without trouble?" The lady momentarily glanced at the wife through the rearview mirror. It was hard to see her. It was too dark. "Oh, yes, dear. I have many friends that kept me nice and safe. We will be meeting some of them tonight. When I was in Milan, my friend actually not only gave me the coat, but also some original writings by Tacitus to get past her lovely neighbor Adolf." "Oh my, that must be very nice." The husband had honed in on the idea of her having a male friend. He was very well aware that she made lots of friends. But why did this particular friend gift her with designer items? Perhaps they were more than friendly. The lady was busy trying to figure out why on earth the union in the back of the car existed. The lady decided she ought to ask now in case they didn't get past the first guard check. "So how did you two meet?" The wife smiled. It was one of her favorite stories. "Oh, well, my father owned a bait shop, and I worked there. Now he would come all the time because he just loves fishing. We had the best bait in the whole county. One day, because we saw him so often, my father invited him for some coffee and cookies I had made. He said he could eat those cookies for the rest of his life. That very night, he asked me to go steady." The husband felt rather embarrassed. It was not a good story, and she had left out all the interesting parts. The lady wanted to laugh. Coffee and cookies? That was the big, great story? The lady felt satisfaction in this discovery, but she still didn't know why they had married. While the lady drove on through the tumultuous road, the husband couldn't help but remember the first time he laid eyes on the woman in the front seat. It had been very sunny. The boardwalk had just opened up for the summer, and kids, teenage couples, and families were milling in and out. She was standing at the entrance of the boardwalk. The bright red and freshly painted white of the arches made her look like a queen holding court. A megaphone was close to her mouth while she stood on a makeshift stage. A crowd of children were looking up at her. His family always came to this beach for the summer months, but this was the first time he had spotted her. Her skin was slightly tan, and her dark ringlets were pulled up at her ears and fell around her shoulders. She looked straight out of a pin-up doll calendar. He had pretended to be lost and asked for her help. He did this for the next couple of days until he got the nerve to ask her to the soda shop at the end of the boardwalk. She had told him soda was a bad idea for a first date, but that she would see him at the Ferris wheel. Now, her time in the French countryside had turned her skin rather light, but her hair hadn't changed. His wife's hair rarely looked more than presentable. She was very kind, but he often found himself lacking in conversation with her. He doubted his wife knew who Tacitus was, or that the painting they were transporting was by Artemisia Gentileschi. Well, he had married an American after all. The wind outside pushed heavily against the car, and it was hard to see anything that wasn't directly illuminated by the car's headlights. The first Nazi checkpoint came up far too quickly for them to prepare for it. Ironically enough, the trio had felt more trepidation in meeting each other than in seeing the soldiers. "Remember, you two are a couple from Spain who don't speak any French," the lady said, squaring her shoulders. The car was put in parking, and just as expected, young Herr Gunther approached. "It's a little wet for a drive, isn't it?" Gunther asked. As soon as the window was rolled down, he slung his gun over his shoulder and placed his hand on the open car window once he realized who it was. "Oh, I know, darling," the lady said empathetically, putting her hand over the boy's. "I just have to get these friends of mine to the train station. They need to head back home. Franco promised to take their lands if they didn't return soon." Gunther shook his head. "You have friends all over the place, Fraulein. Go on now before you know who makes me search the car. Oh, Gunther, you have my sincerest gratitude. When you are done here, head on over to the estate and have Marie give you some fresh bread." That was the first checkpoint. It was a relief to get past it. The wife, who didn't know any German, sat astonished at how easy it was to get by. The husband was not surprised. This was how they used to get around places back in the day. They never paid for anything. His family was rather wealthy, but it just seemed more fun getting in places for free. It really had not been easy. The lady had spent months placating and hosting dinners for the German officers. It allowed her staff, who harbored some Jews, to stay safe, along with the perk of getting past checkpoints without being investigated. The next checkpoint was not as simple. The rain had eased up and the sun was rising. The truth that an American could be spotted in Europe from miles away never failed. "Now, why are you up so early and with company?" the sergeant asked. He was smoking while he leaned up next to the car. "Oh, Carl, well, I'm trying to catch a train. They need to make it home to Spain. Franco is missing them dearly." Carl stared long and hard at the back of the seat. "If I asked to search the car, what would you say?" The lady gave him a cheeky look. "I would say, go right ahead, Carl, but I'd miss my train and there would be no one to tell the servants back home to let you into the estate for those baths you like so much." "Very well. Go on ahead. Just don't let our close friend see you around here." The soldier gave her a pointed look and gestured for the roadblocks to be moved. The lady gave a flirty laugh and moved on. The husband quickly started to deduce how she was able to get through Europe undeterred. She would use her money and looks to get people to concede. If only she had had money 15 years ago. His wife would still be selling fish bait in Missouri to pass the time. His wife's family might have had enough money to buy all of Hitler's soldiers and end the war, but they were not a very refined sort. In total, they needed to get through 3 checkpoints. After that, the couple would meet someone else who would get them to unoccupied France, and then they would never see each other again. It did not seem like a fitting ending to their adventure. Out of the 3 checkpoints, the lady felt that the first would be the hardest. That's where the prickly general was headquartered. Gunther had failed to tell her he was doing a routine checkup and had gone farther south to their last checkpoint. Of course, she did not know this until Klaus apologized to her. "I am very sorry, Fraulein, but he is here, and you know how he is. I have to search the car." The sun had crept higher up, and the Americanness of the wife would become more evident the brighter it got, as long as they kept their mouths shut. "As fast as you can, Klaus. I have a train to catch," she said with another smile. The trio stepped out of the car once they had driven it to the side. Klaus began opening doors and looking through compartments. The lady looked around the checkpoint, and sure enough, there he was, the general. He was looking at them like they had stolen his military plans. The lady took a deep breath and smiled. She waved, and he looked her up and down, scrutinizing, before approaching. Inside, she wanted to kick herself. She should have pretended not to see him. "Frau Lin, running important errands?" he asked, not even looking at her. He was scanning the premises. "Oh, yes, just trying to get my friends to a train." "Where are they from?" The wife looks odd. The lady didn't want to risk the general talking to them. "Oh, they're from Spain. She's Catalonian." The general nodded. "I was stationed in Spain for a bit helping out Franco. My Catalonian is poor at best. I always look for a good chance to practice it." It was as if ice had been poured down her back. The general turned toward the American woman, who was too busy looking agape at everything to realize the danger coming her way. "General! General! A message from Paris." A skinny blonde soldier came racing towards them. Providence had stepped in. God must have liked our Tunisia. "Perhaps I will get another chance. I will see you at the dinner this Saturday, Fräulein." The general clicked his heels and went back to the hut where the soldiers were stationed at. "How is my car, Klaus?" the lady asked, eagerly turning towards her vehicle. "All clean, Fräulein. Go and catch that train." The trio tried to move quickly without arousing suspicion. Once they had gotten far enough from the checkpoint, the lady released her tight grip on the wheel. "He was not supposed to be at that checkpoint. Gunter failed me," the lady said. A sweat had drenched her back, but her coat hid it well. The husband had loosened his tie, and his wife had slid closer to him. She had been trembling the entire time. "You seem to know those guys pretty well," he asked, taking out a handkerchief to wipe his forehead. "One has to stay out of harm's way." Oh, how intimidating that all was. I couldn't understand a word anyone was saying. Those Nazis seemed so human. They smoke, they laugh. It's so very odd to see them like that when they are the enemy. "They also eat all your food and enter your estate without permission," the lady said. She started to notice perhaps why he had married the American. She was very bland. She went along with everything. Anyone could get along with her. As they neared the end of their course, the memory of their first separation started to play in her mind. It played in his also. She had been waiting for him in the bungalow where she lived. Orphans didn't really get to live in nice homes. The orphanage had sent her on her way a year ago, and this was the only place she could afford. It was nice. It was near the beach. The mismatching furniture gave it a humane feel a big mansion would never have. Seashells decorated the windows and certain furniture edges. The curtains were orange and were the only thing that was in a complete set. She hadn't heard from him that week. She had thought it odd, but figured he was busy with his family. There was talk around town that they were planning a big party. He would always take her to them. For the last 3 summers, since they had met, they would go together and laugh at the people and sneak booze to the roof, where they would watch the lights over the town and the moon over the ocean. He hadn't mentioned this upcoming party. They might have parted ways more amicably had she not seen the newspaper first. There it was, in bold print. His parents announced his engagement to some Felicity, the heiress to some oil company. It was rather fitting that later on Felicity called the engagement off. He deserved that. It had been because she was a penniless orphan. His parents would never approve. She knew that. She wished she had locked the door. That way she could keep him outside and not have to see him ever again. He knew he had to tell her. The party was that weekend. His engagement party. "So, when were you going to tell me? Right before the wedding, or would I need to find out in the paper as well?" He had wanted to die. "I don't have a choice. They're forcing me." "Forcing you? This might be England, but we already left the medieval part behind." "I love you, damn it, but my parents—" "You don't love me." She had flung the newspaper at him at that point. "You would have told me. You knew. You knew all along that I'm not rich. Why did you make me believe something when all along you knew? You knew. Why did you make me believe something when all along you knew? You knew. Why did you fill me with hope for 3 entire years only to do this? Why?" He hadn't known what to say. I didn't think, can't you see I don't have a choice? They're my family. I don't care about your family. They're awful people without manners. Their kindness always comes with strings attached. Can't have them open a door for you without a fee. How stupid of me to think you were any different. That's not true, he had said. It was, but he hadn't realized it at that point. Ask around. She had paused and they stared at each other. The warm tones of the sunset felt wrong in the tense atmosphere. The room had held a lot of memories. When it was too hot or too dark to be at the beach, this is where they would come. We have nothing left to say to each other, and there's nothing left to do. That was the closest as she would get to telling him to leave. The nuns had made it very clear that no one ever asked people to leave your home. He had figured she didn't want the newspaper. He picked it up from the floor and headed for the door. He glanced at her one more time. It felt like the last time he would ever look at her, and that made him feel like someone had taken a burning hot poker and ran it through him. The lady and the husband had been so distracted with their memories that they both failed to notice the green army car that had come up behind them. They were jolted when the horn sounded. The lady thought they wanted her to move over so they could get through. She edged over to the side. Much to everyone's dismay, a soldier got out. Fraulein, the commander wants to speak to you. Usually, the word commander wanted to make her pull her nails out, but this time it was a relief. All right, I'll be there in a second. Let me just explain to my friends. She rolled up the window quickly. This is just a little nuisance. I'll be right back. The commander spent a lot of his time and energy on the war, but when he was free, he spent a lot of the same time and energy at the estate, bugging her. She got out of the car and quickly headed over to the green army vehicle. They were still under the pretense of a train to catch. Commander, what can I help you with? He smiled at her before patting the empty car seat next to him. He was an attractive man. His head was full of blonde curls and his blue eyes mimicked the clear sky, but he was insufferable. All right, but just for a moment, I have a train to catch. The lady opened the door and tried not to reveal her annoyance. The commander stared at her before putting his arm on the back of her seat. Well, Fraulein, do you have a train to catch, or is it for Fraulein Gentileschi? The world could have ended in that moment. We caught your Milan contact and he spilled. Now, there is something to be done here. 1, you tell me and sign an official document saying that the couple forced you at gunpoint, but I keep the painting. 2, we send you all off to pay the price of this treachery. Or, and honestly, my favorite option, you go and send the couple off with the painting, but I get a private tour of the estate's interior rooms. He had put his hand on her shoulder. What he was implying didn't fall short on her. She could finally have her revenge. She could have him dead, put away for good. Or, her revolver was with the car keys in her coat pocket. It was only the commander and the soldier. No one would know she had killed them. The soldier was off by the car. He wouldn't hear the close-range shot. The commander would not see it coming, and she did have to reach in her coat pocket for them to open the compartment where the painting was hidden. 4 choices lay before her, none favorable. Many years ago, the husband had revealed who he really was by agreeing to an arranged marriage. This time, the lady's choice revealed hers. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, and we'll see you on Monday.